Morning, everyone, and welcome to today's AGP webinar, Communicating with Clients in the New Normal. As most of you know, I'm Lisa from the AGP office, just here to help facilitate the session alongside Liam this morning. Just before we get started, please can you ensure your microphone is muted to avoid any interference or background noise. There will be question and answer sessions later on, at which point obviously you can come off and switch your microphones back on here. Or if you prefer, you can just pop your question into the chat facility on the side and Liam will do his best to answer those at the end. If you need any support during the webinar, I'll be monitoring the chat, so any problems, please just ask. We are being recorded this morning just to help us collate any questions or comments which may be missed during the live webinar. If you have any concerns over this, please let me know. Following on from the webinar, you will receive 2 emails. We do require you to sign the digital registration form for Welsh Government, which will be your AG3. This will come across to you via HelloSign with a link. Literally takes less than a minute and easy to follow, and we really need to get those back off you just to confirm to the Welsh Government that first the webinar took place and how many people attended. So please send this back as soon as you can. You'll also receive an email with a link to 2 surveys to provide feedback to us. One on the survey itself and one on the COVID-19. Obviously, if you've been on a webinar before, you would have already done the COVID-19 one, so you won't need to do that one again. On that note, I will hand you back over to Liam. So over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Sorry, I was a bit slow on the transition of slides there. I'm not used to them. Yeah, but I'll try and get better now as I take over. Thank you. So yeah, thanks for inviting me on this morning. Very excited to talk to you guys. I think nice small group so we can sort of keep it relatively intimate. My objective really is I'm going to talk quick intro on who I am and why I'm talking to you. We'll talk a little bit about how you can communicate with clients at the moment. It's easy for me to say. And then we'll jump into a bit about marketing, digital marketing mindset at the moment, and then the final section is a little sort of thinking about how we can use digital as a competitive advantage right now. If we've got time, I'll jump in. I've got a few quick examples to run through, and then we'll get to Q&A. So the goal for me is to get through this as quickly as possible and just make it a conversation, and we can ask questions, because typically, especially when we start talking about the marketing side, there's always lots of questions on that. So this is me, that's my ugly mug in the bottom left corner. I am managing director of a company called Spin Dogs based in Cardiff. We've got 60 employees. I've been trading for about 16 years, and my specific specialism is sort of digital strategy, marketing, and using digital as part of transformation projects within businesses. So on a local, and I'm an AGP coach. And I've been for about 2 years now, I think, 2 and a bit years. So but yeah, locally you would know us for we do website for Cardiff Airport, Monmouthshire Building Society. We're doing lots of work and web projects and some ongoing marketing work for departments within Oxford University and people like that. And then on a sort of more applications and technology transformation side, we've done projects for people like Sony, Triumph Motorbikes, Hyundai, and Suzuki, and they're some of those are UK based, but we're also doing stuff sort of pan-European and globally. So Triumph stuff we're doing over like 57 countries. So a broad range of skills across this sort of type of topic. I'm trying to, and today really is about giving you an overview of the sort of key things that I'm seeing, getting questions from clients right now. And yeah, let's go. So I think if we sort of think about digital as a whole, and it's sort of whether it's your website presence, your marketing, whether you've got client portals and mobile applications, or how you communicate with people, the fact you're on this webinar and probably communicating with this technology on a day-to-day basis. I think about 3 months ago, probably less, that was something. It was the whole digital piece as we think about running our businesses. It was something that we were aware of. We knew that technology could be an enabler. We probably knew we needed to invest more in some of our how we looked digitally to the outside world. But the way I've described it is very much sort of like a bonfire over in the next field. You could smell the smoke, but your feet probably weren't quite on fire just yet. And other things would take priority. So you wouldn't necessarily. It wasn't a sort of right. This is all we've got to invest in. This is all we're going to use going forwards. It was something that was. On the back burner a lot of the time. What COVID's done is it's just chucked the petrol bomb on top of that bonfire, and obviously the rate of change in the last 7, where are we now, 8-9 weeks into lockdown, has been absolutely phenomenal. So the adoption of virtual technology and conferencing is gone crazy. We've seen a sharp change in marketing tactics and how people are communicating and the experience they want to give to their customers now. to give a summary, it's a bit of weaving in statistics and some research from McKinsey throughout this presentation. But they're suggesting that in the last, when the statement was published, we've been in lockdown for 8 weeks exactly, I think, and in that 8 weeks, they were suggesting we jumped by 5 years in terms of what the pace of standard digital transformation at that point. So staggering rate of change and adoption and sort of panic for a lot of people, I guess. And the result of that has been that, a lot of people are completely, I told you I'll get a Disney reference in, Lisa. The result of that is that, many are just sort of frozen stiff. They don't know what to do. And the three strands that we're having the majority of our conversations with across that client base that I was referencing is, how do they communicate right now? We'll talk about that in a second. How do they go to market right now? So what tactics should they be using? And then, how are they investing in the future in digital technology platforms, software to sort of enable and improve the client experience, and sort of use it as competitive advantage. So they're the three strands that we're going to cover. So the first one is communicating with clients, and the way we've been working internally is we've broken this down across some basic principles and a sort of overview of an approach, which I'll cover now. So the principles are simple. So I think obviously you need to be communicating with people at the moment. It's being silent, I think, is not a good tactic. I totally appreciate. I don't know everyone on the call, but I totally appreciate that it is different for everyone. But hopefully some of the things I'm going to explain will pay attention to that. But I think, in simple terms, it's be regular. So get in touch with clients in a timely manner. It's important for them to know that they have your support. And I think, remember, what I'm seeing a lot of people do is they're sort of a little bit worried about over communicating, or are we sending out too much information at the moment? But I think that when you're the ones doing the sending, it can often seem like overkill. I would suggest the other way around. When if you think about the information you receive from people on a regular basis, it's nowhere near as a bombardment as you might think. So don't be afraid to have a regular heartbeat there, whether that's a weekly or a monthly piece of outreach. And remember, it doesn't all have to come from the same channel. So it could be email, it could be some phone calls, it could be using social channels, the way you've got social groups set up with clients. We're seeing some clients move, interestingly, to things like WhatsApp now and use setting up groups on that. That's becoming quite popular, and that's just for maybe information sharing or talking about things that they're seeing that might help each other. I think it's super important to be transparent. So I think what I mean by that is letting your clients know, as part of the way that you're communicating with them, about how the changes that you've had inside the business, how has it affected you? Has it impacted your own service levels or not? I mean, ideally not, but there's actually no issue with you being completely honest with people. I think that's really important at the moment. Be human. So if you can reach out to people on a personal level, I know that's not possible for everyone depending on the model you've got and where you sell. But I think if you've got personal relationships with people, pick up the phone to them, send them an email, make sure it's not just a blanket piece of comms, wrap it up with some, seeing how they are and how they're getting on with things. I think it's really important to be yourself as well. So you've got to stay true to your brand. If you had like a sort of very fun and relaxed tone before this all kicked off, you don't need to change that now and become all sort of dour and somber because of the situation. I think you want to maintain that sort of tone of voice that you had, just whilst making sure you're aware that you're being empathetic to the situation. And I think the most important part is adding value. So this is a theme that's going to, all these principles, interestingly, just link straight across into the marketing tactics too. But I don't think that the adding value statement is going to be more important than it ever has been in the last sort of 8 weeks, and will be over the coming months as things start to return to some level of normality for us, hopefully. So focus on how you can help them. Think about, are you doing things slightly differently at the moment, and are you helping people with things like payment plans or those sorts of things? I'll talk to people about that. And if it doesn't just have to be about you guys. So in terms of the value add, could be you've seen another response from another company of how they're dealing with something, and you forward it on and say, oh, look, this might be useful to you. So I've been doing that a lot, where if I've got a client in the office furniture space and I see another company doing something quite interesting about a piece of content they've released, I'll grab that and grab a few links and forward that over to the guys that I work with in that space. So that's, adding value in a slightly different way. And I think the important bit with all this is if you're playing the message of we're here to help, and which I think a lot of companies are at the moment, it's not enough just to say we're here to help. You've got to actually show them, and that sort of links into the whole value-added approach. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of marketing now as well. The diagram on the right is a little codex that we made internally, which I just thought was interesting to share with people. And everyone obviously pinch it and steal it and adapt it to what you want to do, but for your own situation. But this is what we're using at the moment in terms of our marketing team. Whenever they're sending out a piece of comms to clients or as a marketing campaign, they're just validating what we're doing across these metrics. So it's not. It can change for each person, but it's just a nice, simple little tool. If you're a little bit sort of staggered and not sure where to start, that something like that might be a good little tool to introduce to your business. So yeah, overall on the approach, I think the key, it's all well and good getting out there and making sure that you're being regular and contacting people, but we don't pretend everything's completely normal. Especially if you know that clients are struggling. This is about showing that you're there for them, and being empathetic to the situation. I think the last thing people want right now is sort of blunt transactional requests. When they're worrying about the future of their business. So I think be empathetic. Make sure you're as much as you can be gathering information about where they are and how things are going for them, which you'll come into in a second in terms of listening. I had a horrible example recently where I had a recruiter contact me out of the blue, and I don't know the guy, but he regularly emails me probably once every couple of weeks with candidates and various things, and I don't think we've worked with them. But I got an email headline about 2 weeks into lockdown, which just said, your staff are watching you. So I was like, that's a bit odd. So I clicked on it, and it was basically like the whole thing was like a sort of almost like a threat, sort of going, your staff are watching you. If you don't recruit people right now, they're going to think you're weak and you're a bad business. And I just thought, oh my God, what a horrendous example of how not to communicate at the moment. So obviously don't do that. Be empathetic and be there for your clients at the moment. I think that the mindset shift here in terms of comms needs to switch from less about, if you're sending out regular messaging to your client base, it's not just about what you do anymore. You've got to be talking about how you can help them. And I think that links nicely into what we're saying here about listening mode. So you've got, whether it's marketing, sales, whatever department, everyone's got to be listening for what clients are saying right now. So which sectors that we're working into are busier, how are they being affected? And I think making notes of all this and using it tactically is really important. So if you're not already using CRM effectively, then think about that. There's lots of free examples which I can give people links to at the end of the presentation if they want them. But you need to be listening to what they're saying in terms of how they're buying what you sell now. So is that changed? Does your value proposition have to change temporarily? Should you have to deliver things slightly quicker? Is there the dreaded pivot? I mean, I'm not saying that's dreaded, but I think everyone's talking about pivoting at the moment. That's hence why I say dreaded. But do you need to slightly pivot your service to adapt? That's really important at the moment. And I think that's got to be weaved into anything you're sending out as part of a campaign or to clients or as a marketing perspective. It's making sure you're thinking about, well, how does this lead to some dialogue where I can actually gather intelligence? And I actually know people who are doing that. They're doing that on a competitive basis as well. So they're actually reaching out to people that they typically might compete with and just sort of going, look, how's it going for you? Trying to gather intelligence and listening to what they're having to say and using it to inform keep your enemies closer type approach, and sort of sharing information with each other and making sure that they're on point in terms of the things that they're offering to their clients. And I think the last point on this as an overall approach is timing can be key. So not everyone is on the same. My observation to this, and it'll be interesting to see what other people think, is that not everyone is on the same timeline. So I think some people were hit very early, and there's may still be locked down. and having restrictions imposed on them. For us, for example, we sort of had a relatively normal March, and then we started to see the sort of impact of this more at the end of April into May. We had some clients, we've got some legal clients who they didn't seem to think anything was changed until I think like last 2 or 3 weeks, and all of a sudden they're sort of going through quite drastic changes internally to have to adapt. So I think it's really important to understand, unless you're in a niche where all your customers are in the same space, that sector by sector, business by business, not everyone is on exactly the same timeline. So just be conscious of that about when you communicate. And I'll give an example of that in a second. So some wrap up thoughts on this. I think, don't underestimate one-to-one contact. I'd be really interested in the chat, just for people check in, like, have they specific, as business leaders and owners, have you picked up the phone to your clients? Have you sent one-to-one emails to any of your clients? And how have you found that? What have been what's been the feedback? I'd 100% recommend that, and I'll come on to that as an example of something that we're doing at the moment. I think can group chats be something that you can utilize? So again, something that we've been working with clients on, and we've been doing ourselves, is we've been getting groups of clients together, maybe 8 to 10, to talk about a specific topic. But a portion of the session, like a bit like a run at the moment, obviously everything's run in this format as a bit of a webinar, but rather than a presentation, we're just having a conversation, just saying, right, how's everyone getting on? What are people seeing out in the market, and what are people seeing that how are they seeing other brands handle things, or do good examples of marketing, that type of thing. And you're actually getting that knowledge share then between a group of different clients, and that's adding value in a slightly different way. So that's something to think about. I think you've got to be thinking about adding value now to lay the foundations for the future. So one of the key shifts across internal comms marketing to your clients and marketing out to prospects is that what's very difficult at the moment is to being focused on an immediate return. So it's about adding value now to lay foundations for future engagement. I think that's sort of the ultimate message here across both client comms and marketing. And yeah, like I said a minute ago, can you offer creative solutions? So could payment terms work? Can you be looking at maybe, are there joint venture opportunities out there? Can you offer incentivized deals? So we're seeing a large portion of people now who they want to start thinking about in investing in maybe new website or some brand work or some ongoing marketing work. But they're a little bit nervous, or they're a little bit worried because they're not quite out of the woods yet in terms of how they're seeing things in their situation. But by us just very slightly changing the way we offer our payment terms, or sort of incentivizing and say, well, look, if you do X, Y, Z, we'll help you with writing some content or whatever it might be. We're seeing it's helping us to drive business and us hit our objectives and trying to sort of keep the wheels turning. And the final bit on the time, the whole timing and the one-to-one thing is something that we've been doing. Andrew heard me talk about this last week actually, but we when this all kicked off, I think this is a good sort of summary example of this whole piece on communicating with clients. When this kicked off, we batten down the hatches. We went completely virtual within a couple of days, and then I think a week later we started emailing clients, and we did some general broadcast email to clients saying, we're here to help. We're business as usual, all the things that you would expect through this period. But I think I got 1 or 2 personal responses from people who knew me, but all sort of saying like, yeah, we'll get in touch when we're ready. And we were off, part of that comms is we were offering people clinics and one-to-one sessions where we would talk to them about their strategy and what they can be doing moving forwards and planning over the next 6 to 8 months. And we got almost zero take up is the short version of that story. And then we, about six weeks in, so a few weeks ago now, we'd start to see a slight turn. The initial downshift of people slowing down and being a little bit sort of staggered and not being sure what to do had started to release a little bit. A few people had turned projects back on and turned retainers back on. So we were sort of seeing very slow, steady signs of encouragement. So we decided to bring a couple of our guys who we used the job retention, we've been on the job retention scheme, had come back to the office to help us with this outreach program. So what they did then is we went through our entire database. They've gone around the rest of the business then and made sure the data's up to date, checked if they're being account managed, who their person is that they would typically deal with, and then they've gone one-to-one to every single person to arrange a call to talk to them about, how are you getting on, what are the things you need, can we offer any advice, and primarily their first port of call is actually pointing them towards a whole bunch of free resources that we already have, that are on our website, so free training and free downloads and articles and that type of thing. So on the timing point, by doing it 5 or 6 weeks later, I think within a few days, we'd already booked about 8 or 9 appointments with people. Now, we don't have any anticipation that they will turn into immediate work, but obviously the feeling that we're trying to give there is that we were there for our clients when it mattered, and then in whether it's 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, they'll hopefully remember that and be ready to come back and start engaging us with some activity. So that's that on the comms side. I think sort of the segues nicely into the marketing side of things, and I think the key thing I wanted to point out is that the principles for this are the same. So I'm not going to repeat all of those, but I think we're using the same codex that I mentioned at the start. So this thing on the right, we're using whenever we're doing campaigns or activity, we're checking it against all these. Is it adding value? Are we being empathetic? Is it engaging? How do they find it? Is it accessible? But the main point I want to get across today, and this is going to be talking more about the principle rather than giving you a sort of complete 101 lesson on exact tactics, is a principle called inbound marketing. So hopefully some of you guys will have heard of it. If you've not, it's referred to push and pull marketing. It's referred to, some people call it old marketing versus new marketing, like you can see in the diagram here. This is just something I found online. So there's tons of articles out there about this if you want to get into it in a little bit more detail. And HubSpot, which are one of the people, sort of, not the founders of the principle, but they sort of were involved in coining the phrase of inbound. They have a whole academy which is completely free to sign up to, which you can learn all sorts about it and get loads of really good resources there. But the main thing I want to get across is that the majority of people that I meet when it comes to marketing, they're in the right hand side. They're in the old marketing mindset. So they're doing a bit of advertising, maybe some cold calling, using blanket cold data email lists, maybe posting on social, but they don't really know why they're posting on social. They're just sort of doing it because everyone thinks they should be posting on social. And ultimately, it's very much a sort of broadcast, or my personal term, I call it, is sort of spray and pray. They're sort of throwing out activity aimed loosely at clients and hoping that it's going to generate some results. And for some that it does, especially when you weave that into maybe events-based program and sort of networking, all the things that we could do 3 months ago that we can't do now. The inbound approach is much more of a bit more of a long game. And this includes tactics like SEO, proper targeted pay-per-click campaigns and social ads. And underpinning most of it is actually content. So writing blogs, articles, white papers for download, creating video, that sort of thing. And it's very much aimed at a thought leadership approach. And the overall tactic is about building relationships with an audience over a longer period of time, so that when the time is right, they will come to you. And this isn't new. This is sort of 2000. I don't know what, 7, 8 years old as a tactic, if not older. And ultimately, what it does is it puts the client in control of when they, thinking about where they are in the buying process and when they might want your services. So lots of people, when I talk to them, they're a little bit put off by it because of the time that it takes to build up that momentum. But I think right now, if you've been doing this already, then excellent, well done. But right now, when we're in a position where people are sort of a little bit unsure about sort of direct marketing tactics on the right hand side of the outbound, the old marketing, the only way that you can be building momentum for the long term over the next sort of 3, 6, 12 months is you've got to be doing these things on the left hand side. They're all about adding. The entire thing is based on adding value, and that requirement from our potential clients now has gone through the roof. But it's like I say, it will take time. It can be a little bit tricky to measure, so it's another reason why people haven't possibly got into it just yet. But it does produce results. So if you invest in this stuff, you're talking about a potential 60-70%. It'll outperform the traditional marketing tactics by 60 or 70%. Which says it all to me. But I think that what it comes with is an overall mindset shift. And I think really really is about then thinking about your client first. So what we mean by that is, understand who your clients are, so have you done any segmentation, broken down, use, client personas, that type of thing, understanding what their pain points are, and then, putting content in front of them, depending on where they are in the buying journey. Content is absolutely king. So you have to be considering now, because it takes time to get traction. So what I'd be saying is like, if you're not doing it already, now is the time to start doing some inbound tactics, start creating some content. A great example of this I saw a few weeks ago was a consultant that he's a health and safety consultant, works sort of, I think, globally, but he's back in Wales now, running his business from Penarth, I think. And he has he developed for a client like a set of 5 toolkits, like check boxes for people to work through, some of them to do with all different areas of your business. And it was all to do with about how to cope and, dealing with the crisis of COVID, etc. So they were obviously something that he produced as part of something he was working on for a client. He then white labeled them and put them out on social and just said, look, anyone wants to use these. These are a great toolkit to work through and help you structure your business, or think about technology, or think about how your HR issues at the moment as a business. And that was, he put it out on social, got loads of downloads, got loads of engagement, got loads of shares. And that's a great example of like what, I'm sure you've seen this type of thing. That's a great example of a classic inbound approach. So start thinking about doing some of that activity, writing some articles and blogs, maybe thinking about video, maybe host a webinar like this. Just maybe focus on clients initially, just talking about your products and services and how that you can do that more effectively. But if you're not producing content on an ongoing basis, and you're sort of sticking with the old school direct paid for marketing approach, or leaflet and brochure type approach, I think you're going to be that's a massive risk in my eyes. So you need to switch to this approach. And within that, I think it's I said earlier, you're sort of the shift of balance is going towards the end user, to the client, the prospect. So understanding their intent is really important. I'll give you a little tool in a second about how you can categorize that level of intent. But ultimately, it's about understanding that people don't make buying decisions now in a straight line. So I think a lot of diagrams you'll have seen, or may have seen, is sort of a sales or a marketing funnel, which is in a straight line, like left to right or top to bottom. And actually, this diagram on the right-hand side is much more in tune with the reality of how someone makes a decision about making an inquiry or buying a product or online, that type of thing. And the reality is that you don't just move in a linear path left to right. You would often, people, if anyone's bought anything of a sort of semi-significant value, like if you bought a sofa online, or if you bought a piece of furniture online, you hopefully remember and think about this and go, you don't just go from, okay, I need one, I'm going to search for one, I'm going to buy it, and that all happens in a very straight line. You bounce back and forward. And I think, those different stages of where the end user is in terms of their level of intent and when they're ready to buy, it's really important to understand that now. And that's the shift that a lot of our consultancy and advice is that's the area where everything is heading in our world in terms of digital marketing. So like I said, I'll show you a quick example of how you can break that down and categorize that in a second. But the key is to make sure you're playing the long game. It will definitely take time. There's no silver bullet. It's going to take a mindset shift. People, if you have marketing people in the business, you're going to have to let them do their job and let them sort of get on with creating this content. You're going to need to get other internal people within the business to contribute and work together in terms of work with marketing. And yeah, like I said, if you consistently work to that approach of giving value to your clients, it will pay dividends and you will see results. That whole freemium model at the moment, in terms of people offering free clinics, free workshops, free training, all those types of things, is absolute gold at the moment, and something to weave into all this. So in terms of intent, this is a very quick tool, and I'm conscious that I mentioned it in previous slides. So this is just an example of how we break down our whenever we're creating campaigns or activity or content for us or for clients, we tend to break it down to one of these stages. So it's a really simple model called See, Think, Do, Care. Google didn't create this, but someone who it was an ex-Google employee, I think he created it while he was in Google, and now I think he's left, and he sort of has a career effectively lecturing and advising people on this specific tactic. So there's, again, tons of content out there. If you want to do a search for See, Think, Do, you'll find all sorts of articles and guides of how to implement it. But it effectively gets you to force your thinking into thinking about these 4 key stages of C being like someone discovering your brand for the first time. So if they're someone who drives a car, if you're selling a car, it's someone, they just drive a car. They're not necessarily actively looking for one yet, but they are, a qualified audience that could potentially buy a car. Thinking is then they're thinking about the sorts of things you offer. So they might be thinking about, they've decided that they've, for some reason or another, whether it's getting fed up with their other car, their existing car, or seeing some sort of new offers and deals that are out there in the marketplace which are attractive, they start to think, okay, well, maybe we'll need a new car. So they start doing some research. And then the third stage is do, so actively looking to purchase. So out there looking to buy a new car, maybe looking to book a test drive, that type of thing. And the care section is about building advocacy and loyalty. So this is, primarily the first 3 are the outreach marketing tactics, and the last one is about once you have them in as a client, how are you building loyalty and how are you getting to refer you to friends or to place a repeat order. So like I said, there's loads online about this, but I think when you start getting into it's very easy when people talk about inbound or general digital marketing tactics that people start to sort of willy-nilly create content, and they end up falling into the same trap that they're doing with their traditional marketing tactics, which is just sort of splattering it everywhere. What this does is gives you a little bit of a framework to go, right, okay, well, someone who's in the C stage, they probably don't want to be booked. They're not going to be, if you take the car example, they're not going to book a test drive. So advertising to them about test drives is probably the wrong message. But maybe sort of seeing articles or reviews or some sort of piece of advertising about the brand or the car, and that might be the right type of thing. So it's unique to every individual, but definitely worth considering. And to wrap up on the marketing side, I think, the key for me, and you sort of, the new normal is a little bit of is something that I'm not, it's going to be new and different for everyone, I'm sure, but it's, how some of the things that I think people need to be doing now, the whole crisis communication piece, how we're communicating with clients and how we're marketing, none of this stuff is new. So I think that there's been a huge amount of what I've covered so far today is it's not necessarily, okay, this is new things we've developed now on the basis of us being in lockdown. These are this is a cold bucket of water over a lot of people's faces to go, right, okay, look, we need to actually start paying attention to how we're positioning ourselves online, how we're marketing, how we're communicating with our clients. And those that act now will absolutely still march on their competition. If you start embedding this as a tactic over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, you'll get results and you'll be ahead of those that have sat there and waited this out. And I don't know what everyone thinks, but I'm certainly already noticing that it's becoming crowded. So like you'll see, if you hit LinkedIn now, there's already like everyone is pushing webinars, everyone is pushing sort of free downloads and all those things. But I think the key there is that there's a huge amount of what's going on there is what I call mimicking. So it's people are seeing people do that early. Some companies were doing that 9-10 weeks ago. Some companies were doing all that well before this whole crisis kicked off. So they're jumping on the bandwagon going, well, I better start doing this. What they're not doing is actually going, right, we're going to invest in this as a set of tactics for the next 6 to 12 months and properly bed this into the way that we market going forwards. And that's my advice if you're going to dip your toe in the water with this stuff. Just in a quick question there. Andrew Beer, how important is it to establish organizational consistency regarding approach to tonality of messaging? That's a complex question. I'll come back to that at the end, Andrew. I'll just get wrapped up on these last few slides, and then we can open it up for questions. So the last section to cover quickly is how do we create competitive advantage using digital? I'll hopefully give you a couple of takeaways on this. But the whole of this section really came from is more of a bit of a thinking section, really. So I was sort of in a conceptual section. So I've been looking at this quite heavily. We've had lots of clients coming to us saying we want to now start investing and we want to switch to online selling. We need to create sort of client portals digitally, and all those types of things. And that got me quite interested in, you know, what will be the new normal from a point of view of our clients' expectations of us in the way that we present ourselves digitally and the experience that we give digitally. And will it keep moving at the pace that it's been moving already since lockdown? So, what will the long-term impact be? How will clients' expectations change? And what will I need to provide, or what will our clients need to provide to compete in the marketplace now? The behavioural scientists are probably having a field day, because everyone says that it takes 3 months to form a habit, and by the end of lockdown, if we're lucky, we're going to be have been in this for at least 3 months. I think some of the things I'm going to cover now will give you an indicator to where I think maybe things will go. But I mentioned them already. If you're not looking at them, there's lots of people giving out sort of consultancy advice and writing lots of good content about these things. But McKinsey's digital strand in their website is absolutely first class. So I'd suggest checking in on there and just keep signing up to their mail shots minimally, and just getting. And if there's anything that takes your fancy, or it's a sector-specific paper about the things you work in, then keep a track on it. But yeah, we're going to try. I'm going to see if everyone's awake now and see if they're going to use the group chat. So if minimally Andrew's awake, because he's asked a question, so you can answer, Andrew. So I'm going to do a bit of a quiz now and just see what people think of this. So, so in terms of the whole transformation piece and how this is changing businesses and the way we operate digitally, how many businesses, and percentage wise, how many businesses do we think have adopted a virtual sales model in a percentage terms? Go on, Andrew. Tell me, what do you think? It's a percentage answer. Is anyone going to contribute?
70%. So I go for 70.
70. Just chuck it in the chat, anyone, if you are still awake. 5%. Yeah, interesting. 30. Thanks, Peter. Andrew's gone 70. 50. I got to confess, I actually got the slight wording wrong on this. So it's not necessarily a fully virtual sales model. I think the fully virtual is something like 40%, but either a fully or partially virtual sales model is actually 90%. So a huge uptake in people switching to that model. These are people who weren't doing it before. These are people who were doing face-to-face sales, pick up the phone type sales before that. Building on that vein, how many believe how many already that have adopted that new virtual model believe that it's already equally effective, or if not more effective? What do people think on that, percentage wise? This was the one that surprised me. Good one. 65, Andrew. Okay, nice, Simon. 100, ambitious. 80, so 60%. And this, bearing in mind, this was, I think the survey, this is a pulse survey that McKinsey sent out to 3,600 B2B execs. And this was, I think, published on the 30th of April, just a few weeks out of date now. But still, if you think about where we were on the 30th of April and how long we've been locked down, for it to be at 60% that quickly, when people have made the shift that quickly, that's only going to grow. So the effectiveness is, in my eyes, is going to grow. So it wouldn't surprise me if, looking at what Simon's saying of 95%, Peter 80%, it wouldn't surprise me if it's getting closer to those numbers already now. And how many do you think are already, based on what they've achieved? And so bearing in mind April, where were we? That's probably like 5 weeks of lockdown. After 4 to 5 weeks of this, how many do you think were planning to sustain the virtual model or the digital model for 12 months or longer once COVID? I don't know how they've established post-COVID, but yeah, I can't tell if I'm in the old one or new. Yeah, 60%, good one, so 74%. So again, bearing in mind this was a few weeks ago, I'm expecting these numbers to have gone up by now. And I think sort of when you start thinking about the direction of travel these numbers are sort of taking us towards, it's going to be different for everyone. But if you start thinking about our overall digital channels, this was this was something that was published in the same paper, and the statistics were a little bit more hazy. They didn't the way they wrote it wasn't quite as easy. So I've distilled it into something a little bit more digestible. But what they were saying is, if you think of the digital channels, whether it be apps, website, social media, all those things, how important do you think those business leaders said that they were right now, or how much more important? It's obvious that they're more important. I haven't been paying attention to the chat, so have you all written your answers already? I'll say 70, yeah, fine. So it was 2 to 3 times more important, basically. So 100 to 200% more important. So I think where my interest in with this is which I'll come on to in a couple of slides, is to do with how consumer, I say consumer, our clients' expectations of us as businesses will change, and how then you've got newer sort of businesses that are starting up completely digital first now. How do we make sure that we can compete and we can provide that level of experience? And one of the things that we do with clients is that as I'm talking, feel free to pick where you're on the scale. But when I sit down and talk to clients about their sort of digital strategy, I often sort of say, look, our job as a providing support to people is firstly understanding on where they are of a scale of 1 to 10. So 10, you're never going to get 10 because digital moves so quickly that you can't have 10. So 8 or 9 would be exceptional. 1 or 2 would be you're sort of looking at your website, your social media, your online transactional stuff, any ordering platforms you do, any communication tools or collaboration software you're using to collaborate with clients. As a whole, where do you sit on that scale? What I think is scary is that that overall experience you're giving to clients right now, in terms of the sales process and winning new clients, what McKinsey is saying is that if you're providing an exceptional experience, so that 8 to 9, you're over 100% more. You're guaranteed to win the business versus someone at a 1 or 2. And I meet loads of people who always say they're a 1 or 2, and they're probably not. They're probably a little bit higher. So that's classed as sort of poor versus exceptional, and then 3 to 5, which would be classed, let's say, as average. You're someone with an average, providing an average digital experience is 8 or not is 70% less an exceptional company has 70% more chance of winning the business against you. So quite staggering numbers there, I think. So to sort of conclude, I think, how do you think about using that information, start to think about what that means for the future and the potential new normal is, what do you do right now to start thinking about how you drive your advantage? So I think now is about removing frustrations. So I think, tidying up website, making sure people can find things quickly, sorting out your social media profiles. I mean, I've had a massive uptick in people adding me on social and inviting me to like their group pages or like their company pages, because obviously people are spending time on this stuff now. But aside from that, can you be looking to improve do you have online ordering facilities? Can you offer online ordering facilities? Can you digitize contracts? Are there sort of workflow tools that you could be using and sharing with clients that could make the experience a little bit easier? I'll give an example of a friend of mine who runs an accountancy business in a minute. But yeah, if you're running apps and you've got technology out there which has some sort of client touch point, make sure there's no bugs in it. Make sure they're fixed, because those frustrations are an absolute killer when it comes to sort of retaining and winning new clients. Speed is critical, so making sure people can find what they need and solve problems very quickly. If they can't find what they need, they'll be frustrated and they will leave. That is, and that's all linked to this self-service approach I'm going to cover now. So there's, again, sort of, it's quite commonly documented that B2B environment is sort of chasing the B2C market in terms of expectations of digital. In the B2C space, you can, I can use an app to online, I can jump onto online banking, I can set up payments, I can check order statuses, I can do all those things. And what the basic principle here is that, that's B2B is always being dragged closer and closer to that, because that's what people are now, in terms of their daily lives, are expecting. People want to do things for themselves instantly. things I'd be thinking about right now with, can you be including things like live chat or chat bots to your site, just to add as a little stepping stone, for example. If can I be providing clients with a portal where they can log in and check order statuses or place repeat orders and do things on their, off their own back. They're all, there's, I think, I can't remember the exact stat now. It's something like, I think it's like 90%. It's become 90% more important since the last 2019 study in that McKinsey report. That people are expecting this sort of self-service approach to the way they do business with people now. And the last couple of points is, focus on improving the experience. So, what we're seeing at the moment is lots of people coming to us about are they trying to find out ways of integrating technology or as building technology that will allow them to, onboard new clients in a quicker way, doing things like check your order status, like I just mentioned. Looking at things like virtual learning, whether that's literal VR, virtual reality, or just sort of digitizing online what was offline learning into video-based learning platforms. We're getting loads of inquiries from people looking to now develop quite specific mobile applications to solve problems because of the situation. This stuff in terms of budget, it doesn't have to cost the earth. So a friend of mine runs an accountancy business, and he's just invested. I can't remember the exact fee, but it's like between $50 and $60 a month or something. It's not a huge amount of money, and he's now got a platform that allows him to send a quote to his customers digitally. They can within that quote document, they can turn things on and off, change the price themselves, dial up things in terms of the amounts of things, and change the quote to suit them. They can sign off the quote and agree a contract and sign the deal, all digitally without him having to do anything. And then when they process and sign that deal, it automatically raises all the automatic billing into zero and sets them up as a client. For like less than 100, all in the different bits of technology, using less than $100 a month. Forgive me, I can't remember. I don't know what that is in old money. Not conversion rates, not up to date. But yeah, you don't have to be spending tons of money on this, and that there are lots of the tools that are out there are free or have free entry level models. So there's things like Trello is a good example for sort of project collaboration tools. We find that lots of clients really like that, being able to see sort of project mapping and where they are in the process of the project. Loom is a great example of something where it's like a video recording tool where you can capture yourself talking through a presentation or a proposal and send that to clients. And again, that's free. Drift is a good example of something which is free. If anyone wants these links, shout me afterwards. I can give them. Drift is a good example of a free chatbot application. And when we tried this, we used chatbot about 7-8 years ago on our website, and it was awful. It was before people were really used to it. And just sort of on that B2C to B2B track, now that most sort of customer facing B2C brands, loads of them are using chat now. So as part of this lockdown, I thought, well, let's do a trial. And we'll chuck Drift is the one we used. It's like I said, we used their free account, and we chucked an online chat application onto our website about 8-9 days ago. I think we've had 3 or 4 like strong leads from it already. We've had multiple 10-12 conversations, so that was that's already outperformed where it was 7-8 years ago when we last tried it. So I think it plays into the self-service element of people being able to get information quickly. So think about that, and things like HubSpot as well. I've mentioned their free training, but they also have their free CRM as well. So if you've not got CRM set up and running, then dive in and have a look. I'm conscious of time, Lisa. How are we doing? You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I've just got. I mean, I'll come back to them if we get time. There was a couple of quick examples here that I was going to mention. I won't go through them all.
I've got some questions for you that come through on my private chat.
Yeah, cool. I'll just quickly touch on a couple of these as examples of people I've seen doing stuff locally, and then we'll jump into Q&A. And if people have got time, I can stay around for as long as people need. So I know other people will have stuff to get on with. So I think WhatsApp is a good example of. I mentioned it through the talk, but this is something I read. I think first week down into lockdown here is that in China there was a business called I can't remember the name of them now, but they're effectively the Chinese equivalent of Body Shop, and they actually I thought was really interesting sort of approach and a way of thinking differently was rather than them putting all their I don't know what their equivalent of furlough is if they have one or not, but rather than putting all of their shop assistants and sort of sales staff that were on site onto furlough. They actually kept them all employed, trained them all on how to use WhatsApp and how to use social media from an influencer perspective over a couple of days, just sort of basic tactics, and gave them all offer codes and sort of specific product package links that they could send to all their family and friends in their own networks. And they actually increased their sales by 200% year on year for that month. I think it was April. I think it would have been April, yeah. So I thought that was just really clever way of sort of thinking differently. Jeffrey Ross, I've seen local estate agents based in Cardiff. I think they may be further afield now, but they've certainly got some places in Cardiff. They are now doing, I saw on LinkedIn the other day, they're now offering people to sign up, register online immediately, and you can do a virtual tour of properties in a group. So they'll have someone on site at the property who will do a virtual walk around, and you can dial into that from home as a group of, I think, 8 people. So you can still get out there and view properties. I won't go through all of them because of time, but Porsche are doing the same. So it's a slightly bigger brand, but what they're doing is they've got the Porsche Museum at their headquarters, and you can sign up rather than sort of go where you normally go for tours and that sort of thing. So they're now doing that where you have, someone takes you around with a camera and you do that virtually and you have conversation with the person as they're taking you around the tour, so you can ask questions. QBS are a dynamic Microsoft Dynamics partner training business that are based up in Treforest. They immediately, so in already now they've now managed to, in sort of 9 weeks in, they've managed to convert what was 60 different tracks of training into fully digitized e-learning platform. So they realize that, and that's not just going to impact what they're doing right now. That's going to impact, that'll be there for the future, and obviously giving them a much broader market offering for the future too. And then, I've just mentioned Accelerator Growth because AGP, because I think these events are a great example of it. Of everything I've been talking about. It's about adding value, supporting clients with no immediate request or expectation, but building trust and relationships with their customers. So good job, AGP, hopefully. So that's me. Questions? I'll stop sharing so you can see my mug again. There we go. So Andrew, talk to me about your question. What was you? Should I start with you? That was the one I could see on the chat.
Yeah, it was. My point was about consistency of message across the organisation. If you've got multiple interfaces with a client, how important is it to establish consistency and tonality?
Yeah, I think it's definitely important. I think it can be tough. So like we found that already where the outreach program I mentioned that we're doing. One of the key stages that we made sure we implemented at the start of that was go to the person who was going to be contacting the client had to go and speak to all the key account managers, all the relationship guys, and our support team, and go, right, when did you last contact them? What was their like? We didn't want to. The last thing, if they've just had, thankfully we don't have many of these, but no one's perfect. The last thing you want is someone who's just had a bit of a moan about something that wasn't quite working on a website, for example, and then and they've just had that all sorted out by our support team, and the next day our person is going, how can we help you? What do you need, sort of thing. So I think ensuring that consistency in that context across the entire business is really important. How you do it, I guess, is very different for everyone's individual situation. But I think one of the key things for me is, and the key, we've experienced this, Andrew, and other things we've worked on is it's making sure that minimally, if you've got sort of separate sales and separate marketing teams, they are really working together and having consistent dialogue. It isn't one serving the other, or they're sort of disconnected functions of the business. They've got to be in cahoots and listening to what the sales guys are saying about, or account managers are saying about your clients. The marketing guys need to be then building on and using that as part of the message and the tone going forwards. I think that answers it. What else you got, Lisa?
We'll get past your percentages questions a minute. How much focus should be placed in comms and nurturing existing clients versus new/lower value clients?
Very situational, but I think it depends on where you are as a business. For us, for example, we know that we get sort of something like 85 to 90% of our revenue comes from our existing client base. So for us, that's very strong. But however, what we've seen is that all the tactics I've been talking about in terms of inbound and the content approach, that's something we've been doing for many years now. So we've actually managed to sort of achieve a relative balance of both. So our focus in terms of where our activity is right now is primarily aimed at supporting the existing client base that we've got. But we are still now starting to see a steadier increase in new opportunities and new leads. Thinking to what you're saying, just from getting the tone of this, but I've noticed that probably there are more opportunities being generated at the moment that are sort of slightly lower value. So they're sort of what I mean by that is they might be smaller, short snippet projects where people are just looking to tidy up maybe social marketing or tidy up SEO or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can give a specific answer without knowing more about who you are and who's asked and what the business is. But my gut feel and my reaction is that, I think you need to, if you've got a customer base that is already places regular repeat orders with you, 100%, it's about figuring out, right, when will they be ready to spend? How can they spend? Figure out new ways you can get them to spend. Offering them new solutions and starting with those guys.
Are the triggers to move towards more sales orientated more likely to be person/client or sector specific?
Say that again.
Are the triggers to move towards more sales orientated more likely to be person, client, or sector specific?
Who's that? Sorry, I don't understand the question. Whoever's asked that, can you jump on and ask me, say that in real time so I can get a better handle on what you mean?
Hi Liam, it's
bloody Andrew again. Here we go. I knew that. Go on.
Obviously you've got the person on the end of the phone or the end of the email, you've got the business itself, and you've got the sector. It's quite complex to know when you can move those conversations on, if you like, to a
sorry, got you. Yeah. What's the ultimate question? How do you figure that out? I think a reality. There's no magic solution to that. I mean, we're all in the same boat, aren't we? I mean, I think, for example, we had quite a large piece of work that we were talking to with a law firm, with a global law firm, which we were sort of hoping was going to be quite a major project for us about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was effectively all costs and budgets were approved, and because we'd sort of seen that our the immediate decline of general people like battening down the hatches and panicking had sort of stopped. And we'd start to see people turning things back on again. We sort of assumed that we'd passed all those issues, but based on their size and their sort of global footprint, they just hadn't seen the effects of this for sort of 3 or 4 weeks for 3 or 4 weeks longer than anyone else. So all of a sudden they're now facing sort of having to, they've got certain cuts, looking to use the job retention scheme. Their budgets are all being frozen until the end of the year, interestingly. So they've obviously, the only way we're sort of managing to do it is by just having dialogue with people. So I think there's some that you just know. So I think if they're in certain sectors like tourism, hospitality, the classic ones, I think that are currently being sort of quite heavily restricted due to lockdown. You know that automatically. But outside of that, it's about having non-sales orientated, genuine, how are you getting on? What's going on with the business? How are you guys coping? Conversations. And that's effectively what we're doing with the outreach program. And I've seen others doing that, where the first port of call, that client communication is not about asking when do you need us, or trying to sort of make it turn into a sales message. It's genuinely saying, look, we're trying to gather some intelligence on our client base. How are you coping? When are you seeing things? When do you think you're going to see things returning to some level of normality for you? When your budget's going to be released, that sort of thing. And you're doing it from an information gathering perspective, and obviously making sure you're logging that and using some form of, whether it's, if you've not got CRM, just a spreadsheet, just make sure it's all being logged and used. But I don't think there's a magic answer, sadly.
I got one more in there, and I think we've got another question down from Peter as well on there. To re-establish confidence in organisations seeing marketing as an investment, what might be a couple of tactics that would most obviously show quick wins and ROI?
I think, it's so situational. So whoever that is, I'm very happy. Is it you again, Andrew? You guilty as charged. I think it's very situational to each client, that is. But I think the things that we're seeing at the moment, we're seeing lots of people sort of tweak, like I said already in the presentation, they're focusing on sorting out website structure, website content, making sure that things are, you're giving people all the information they want when they arrive at you, and that if they've come to the site with that level of intent, they're actually interested in looking for what you do, that they can find the relevant information. I think what we're seeing in terms of the majority of our quick win stuff at the moment is very targeted. We're doing the sort of persona out development where we're understanding who the clients are for people. That's sort of the starting point. So figuring out who they are, what are the pain points, what's the value proposition that the business offers to the client. And then if it is about sort of, if speed is a sort of underlying necessity of we need to get something done relatively quickly, then very targeted paid advertising and social campaigns and landing pages are working quite well. Something that I know that we've talked about before is then sort of the account-based marketing side of things. So I think that's something that we're talking to lots of clients about at the moment. For those that don't know, that's a sort of strategy where you actually select accounts or potential clients from a list as a starting point, and then you create campaigns very much targeted to each individual specific client. So it is sort of probably a bit more of an outbound tactic. But for me, if you're going to go outbound, then this is where I'd be investing my money. So you're sort of building dedicated content, tailored, personalized content to specific individuals or organizations about how you can help them solve their problems, and using social channels, mix of social, email, landing pages, video content to serve to them, to try and open up and start a conversation. So we're having lots of chats about that at the moment. We're not. The downside of that is it can become a little bit, slightly more expensive than some of the standard paid advertising routes, because of the amount of content you've got to generate and set up. So, but yeah, I think the paid stuff and organic social is another area that we're seeing lots of people upping their game in terms of content creation. And I won't go into it now, but there's a load of, I think LinkedIn themselves give some quite good guides and details on how you can use social channels how you can use LinkedIn from a sort of to build your profile and build your audience. I think the basic principles are, make sure the regularity piece, make sure you're you're sharing certain amounts of content, make sure you're generating a certain amount of content. And building like a little bit of a plan there, but we're finding that the people who are doing that are definitely seeing more traction as well.
And you just got one on the end there from Peter. I don't know if you can see that one.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, I think good question, Peter. I guess it's not about you're not really, the ambition with that isn't that you're actually trying to identify them specifically. It's more about you identifying, you identifying in relation to your business and what you sell. If you take people from that sort of the top to bottom of that diagram, where are they in that process, and what type of information would they like? I haven't got it in this presentation, but if you do a search for see, think, do content types, there's some really nice diagrams which I've written one off for another presentation before actually, and done an example of what we do as for our tactics. But if you search for that, you can see loads of great examples of where it shows the different stages and it shows the content types that you would then create. That's where I would start. So like I say, it's not about pigeonholing the individual client necessarily. It's more about you understanding the types of information that are relevant to your overall client base at those different stages. If that makes sense.
That's it on the chat, unless anybody wants to come off microphone and ask anything, or I think some have had to shoot off. They've had other calls to go.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, of course.
I think you go off and have a coffee now, Liam.
Yeah, I've got a bottle of gin next to me. Look,
yeah.
It's there from the weekend.
Gotta be a flavoured one. I don't like just gin. Gotta be my 13-year-old's been asking me to buy gin. I thought, yeah, that's not happening. She had one at the party, and it's like, no chance.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I hadn't had a drink since the 16th of March until the weekend. So
really?
Just for some reason, because when you're spending all day on Zoom, the last thing you want to do is catch up with your mates for a beer on Zoom, isn't it? It's like,
yeah. Well, I have my thyroid taken away, so I can't drink anyway. So it messes my meds up if I do. Yeah. All good fun and games. Okay, well, thanks, Liam, for that.
No worries, thank you very much.
And we're okay if anybody asks for the slides. Am I okay to send them out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we do need the AG3 signed and sent back to us before we can do it. But yeah, we're good to go with those. So thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Enjoy your gin, Liam.
We'll try. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.